Hello, everybody. Whoops, just tripping a little. So we touched on this a little bit at the panel that we just had, but we're going to do it again, going a little more detail. So the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, also known as Mnea, is a bill that we've been pushing through for a few years now, and essentially would provide much needed support to people who rely on medical foods to survive and to thrive. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, and she's going to describe what's going on, what's the state of play right now.
Thanks, Lillian. So we've said that we've been working on this legislation for a long time. I think this is the 6th Congress, so that's 12 years in which we've had some form of medical foods and formula legislation. What's different about the last 2 Congresses is that this bill is supported by a coalition of organizations. There's almost 40 organizations, patients and providers who are on this bill. And I'd like to say it's not just PKU. It's tyrosinemia, homocystinuria, maple syrup urine disease, and also a lot of GI disorders, Crohn's and colitis, short bowel syndrome, etc. And on the theme of this morning, which is better and stronger together, I think that was also the goal of the coalition, was we all need these medical foods and formulas. And if we can make a stronger group together, we can, we have more manpower, we have more constituents, we have more legislators we can influence to pass this legislation. So we're in the 117th Congress right now. The bill that we have is both bipartisan and bicameral, and it's identical. What those words mean: bipartisan, it's supported by both Republicans and Democrats. We have a Republican co-sponsor in the House and the Senate, and we have a Democratic co-sponsor in the House and the Senate. That's because this is not a political issue. This is medical care. It's just, there's no politics in it. It is about what we need to survive and thrive, as Lillian said. So bipartisan, bicameral, again, same bill in the House and the Senate. Why that's good is because if it passes the House and it passes the Senate, then they don't have to spend a really long time arguing and getting the comma in the right place and everything, because it's the same language. Speaking of the same language, the text of this bill was approved for TRICARE, military health insurance, in 2017 in the Defense Reauthorization Bill. People in the military have the Medical Nutrition Equity Act now. And we're working on a report to show how that has been effective, but getting a cost and effectiveness study out of the Department of Defense is like a 10-year process. Hopefully we'll just pass the bill before then. So where are we now? As Lillian said earlier, we're nearing the end of this Congress. There are still chances to pass the bill before this Congress ends. And we can talk a little bit about how we can push this forward. Lillian mentioned it earlier. And if it doesn't pass, we're going to reintroduce it next term. We have our co-sponsors. They will continue to support the bill. As Lillian mentioned, we have a ton of momentum this year. And I'll just give a quick reason why we have that momentum. Sadly, the baby formula shortage, as the rest of the world calls it, and to us, the medical formula shortage, was maybe the best thing to happen to this bill in a long time. It's been, incredibly difficult for tens of thousands of people across the country, but PKU has been in the news and in the mouths of politicians and in the boardrooms and, in the testimony in Congress everywhere. It has been mentioned in the media in the last 3 months more than has ever been mentioned in the last 10 years. And so we're really trying to leverage that. Now that people understand that those cans of formula are really an essential medical treatment for babies, we've been able to remind them that it's not just for babies, and it is an essential medical treatment. And if it drops out, we have a huge medical crisis on our hands. And for us, that crisis doesn't end when supply resumes. We are now getting to the point, Abbott factory has reopened. We'll soon start manufacturing metabolic formula. A lot of the back orders and shortages that the other companies have had are resolving, but we still have thousands of people who don't have access to that supply because they don't have sufficient medical nutrition coverage, like David's story earlier.
Yes.
So what can you do about it?
So what can we do about it? So I wanted to reiterate that when we're meeting, right now we're meeting with representatives and senators with the goal of getting more Republicans on board. We currently have Republicans on board. As Sarah said, it's a bipartisan bill. So there's no inherent reason why a Republican would toe the party line on this particular bill. It's just not a thing. The main thing we come across as a resistance with both Republicans and Democrats is that they don't understand what medical nutrition is. They simply do not understand. They're like, how is medical nutrition different than nutrition? So when we're having these meetings, and I hope that you all will help sign up for the upcoming week of advocacy that we're going to have this summer. Again, we're going to have a QR code so you can scan it on your phone and it'll just pop up the link on your phone or your website or your computer. When you meet with your representatives and your senators, the main thing you're going to talk about is what PKU is. And it's something that we do all the time, like every day. Every time you sit down with someone, you're going to eat a meal. You're like, here we go. And you go through the whole spiel about what PKU is, or maybe you don't, and that's fine too. No pressure to actually do that monologue, but we know how to do it. We're equipped to tell our stories. And that is the main thing that's needed in advocacy right now, is to tell your story, to let them know what PKU is, to educate them on what medical nutrition is. And we are experts at medical nutrition at this point. Whether you have a child who has PKU or you yourself have PKU, you know what it means and you're the most equipped to speak about it. So that's the main need that we have right now. Today is the last day to register for Rare Across America. And then we also have upcoming a White House conference on hunger and nutrition. They're still planning the date. It's going to happen in the fall. And they are trying to figure out what they want to prioritize at this conference. So there's a form where you can fill out your story and describe what is important to you about nutrition and hunger. And right now we're trying to get as many people within the PKU and allied disorders community to submit their stories about medical nutrition and to help use this, hopefully get into this conference as a way to educate people about what this term means and why it's so essential and medically necessary. So we will also have a QR code at the advocacy table where you can scan it and it'll open up that White House submission page so you can let the people planning this conference know why it's so important to you. And on the other side of things, working with Mnea, which is the group of allied disorders that Sarah was describing, as well as Crossroads, we are on the other side having meetings with important representatives and people who are pulling the strings of the committees who are creating this conference and who are doing this type of thing. So right now we have a very, very, very powerful multi-pronged approach towards getting this passed. So grassroots activation is always important, but right now it's almost like when you have a matching campaign financially. This is what we have politically right now. We have a matching campaign with a lot of lobbyists who are on our side and pushing this through. And we may not always have that. We may have it for a while longer, but it's so important to capitalize on having it now, not take it for granted, and really push our grassroots advocacy as much as we can. Yeah.
I want to clarify a little about the White House conference, because you may be like, great, we'll get the White House to talk about it. What does that do at this conference? What comes out of these conferences and the reason administrations do them is because it's saying we're setting a priority for our administration, for our legacy. They want to make a mark. What happens in these conferences is that packages of bills are developed on the themes of the conference, and they say, okay, these points are important to us. Here's a package of bills. We're nearing the end of this Congress. Let's try to push it through. And again, this is a bipartisan approach. It is led by the White House, but it has a lot of Republicans who are involved in it. Again, it's about health and nutrition and hunger. It is not about politics. And so what we're trying to do with the White House conference is get medical nutrition on the agenda in the hopes that when they are picking those bills that are going to go into that end of year package, they say, oh yeah, that Mnea thing, let's throw that in. And so that is one legislative path. There is also a chance to have hearings on the bill and go through this sort of normal channels. But you know, they're in recess right now. There's a recess in August, and then we're going to roll into the midterms. So again, the multi-pronged approach is important. I don't want to bum anyone out, but if we don't pass the bill this year, We're just, like I said, we're going to do it again next term. And to that end, we need to keep our foot on the gas, because if we get more people based on the formula crisis, based on talking about hunger, if we get more legislators to sign on to the bill, when we call them next year, when the bill is reintroduced, and say, oh, you signed on in December, we can re-up you. It's really easy for them to say, yep, put us on the bill again. The bill won't have changed. They've agreed to it just a few months prior. So the support for the bill doesn't die if the bill dies. And so we just need to keep that pressure on, keep explaining to people why it is important to us. And really, again, it's just basic medical care. We get it for our allergy medicine, we get it for statins, we get it for everything else. And the impact of it is often much, much larger, because again, you can move to another state and get coverage for your statins, or you can have another child and their medical care will be covered. But for us, that often represents a tremendous financial burden that is really restricting everyone's ability to live to their fullest and really make the most out of what they have.
Absolutely. That's so true. I feel like, do we want to open up for questions?
Yeah, let's do questions.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions about the Medical Nutrition Equity Act or efforts? Yeah. There's a mic coming to you.
So when you go talk to a congressperson, explain to them, medically necessary nutrition and all that, and they still say no, is there a theme to why this isn't a slam dunk? And why it is kind of bipartisan, but not balanced?
A couple of things. Lillian said, thanks for the question. Lillian said they don't understand it. So even if you've explained it really well, it's still a little murky. Like, oh, is it gluten-free? No, it's not gluten-free. Is it prescription? No, actually it's not prescription, but it's kind of prescription. So there's a lot of confusion and it's kind of hard to explain. But assuming they get it, the next question is usually, well, I've only heard from one person. That's where y'all come in, because they need to hear from more people. This is a small, obscure bill. It's huge to us, but out there in the real world, it's tiny. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's tiny and obscure, and they don't really have enough people clamoring after them. So if you call them, they say no, call them back. Amy and Heidi will tell you that their Utah senators really don't like to hear from them. And they've sort of said, please stop calling me, but they don't stop calling, because you need to continue to do that. To your point on bipartisanship, the biggest objection we get is that I don't support mandates on private insurance. So on a private company, I do not support a mandate. And then we point out that it's in the Defense Reauthorization Act, and that it has actually already been voted on and approved by a Republican administration. So, a Congress under a Republican administration. So there's that, and you can say, will you support this care for our military? Do you not? And there's usually, oh yeah, it's great. Well, that's the standard of care that you've established for our military. Everyone in this country deserves the same standard of care.
And also, just anecdotally, I'm from New York, and I met with my Democratic senator's office multiple times over the course of 4 years, and then they came on board. So it's also about how many times they hear the message. I wasn't the only person meeting with them. There were also other people meeting with them. So how many times, how much pressure do they feel in order to make it a priority? So also, if you think about marketing, right? I also work in the marketing world. You need 7 touches before you convert a lead. So think of it that way with advocacy as well. They need to feel the pressure from multiple different points and in a sustained way over time. But we start now. We start today. Yeah.
I just had a really quick comment. So I have talked to, I'm from Colorado, and have talked to folks in Michael Bennett's office, and his staffer full on told me, yeah, this is great. I can tell you what's going to happen is this paperwork that you gave me is going to go on the bottom of his desk. So you need to keep reaching out to us and keep reminding us that it's there and that it's important. And then as far as messaging, I just noticed going through the folders in the bags that we were given at check-in, somebody put together some really great high-level simple messages that we could all borrow from when we're meeting with folks. And then lastly, I just had a question at the advocacy table. You said that organization we can sign up with, today's the last day. That organization will reach out to our representatives and make the appointments for us.
And there's
Correct.
Also training.
Awesome.
They will
Yeah.
also train y'all. So you can send
Oh,
a Zoom
wow.
meeting about
Even
how to
better.
do your
Okay.
2-minute speech. But yeah, they'll make all the appointments for you.
Woohoo. All right. Thank you. Where's the advocacy table? Just right
It's
in
right
there.
outside.
Okay.
I'll be there shortly.
Okay, we'll take one more quick question and then people will be out here on advocacy
we can.
to talk.
Mine's real simple. Where can we get a copy of the bill to read over? it?
Congress.gov. We can give you the bill numbers. They're actually out there. There's postcards that you can fill out right there to your Congress people. Put your home address on it. We'll look up the Congress people. We'll stamp them. We'll send them for you. But that has the bill numbers on it. So if you don't want to remember S 2013 and HR 3783 right now, you can get a postcard and it has it written on that. And you can just look them up.
We'll do one last one. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, so my name's Kayla. I'm from Wyoming, Republican state. This year, I'm actually recruiting all of the families in Wyoming that I know to do Rare Across America with me, because one voice isn't going to change anything, right? Or 7 years of voices might. So I'm trying to get all of them to come with me, and we'll do this kind of as a group. I got that Rare Across America email this year, and I went on Instagram and Facebook and I shared about it. Taking one day off work to change the future for your kids in this whole community is what this is for. I forwarded that email over 30 times to people. So I hope they all registered, because we could absolutely make this our year. So
I just want to give
Amazing.
a shout out to Kayla. I was a facilitator for Rare Across America last year, so I got to go to a lot of different state meetings, and she was amazing. Her kiddo was amazing. Having the kid there on Zoom, hitting buttons and doing stuff, and really, this is the future voter, was incredibly effective. And she spoke with real passion, and I think that's what Lillian's been talking about. You don't need to know the ins and outs of, congressional rules and everything else. You just need to tell your story and why this is essential to you.
right, and they do meetings. So you attend a meeting, they give you all the information you need. They schedule the meetings for you. They literally do it all for you. You just show up. So, I mean, we can all do it. We really can.
Great point. And thank you, everybody. And Sarah and Lillian, again, thank you so much for everything.